What's up guys, Houndish here, and today I wanted to jump in and talk about the state of returning exotics in Destiny 2. Now this is absolutely one of the ongoing conversations when we talk about new or future content, and recently it's been a pretty hot topic as we talk about weapons like the Last Word, the Thorn, and other potential reprise pieces of gear in the future. It's safe to say that there are differences of opinion here. So we will discuss some of the most highly requested exotics from D1, but I also want to talk about some of the perspectives I see in the community about returning exotics, and as always, not everybody feels the same way, so be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Firstly, let's talk about why there could be differences of opinion about returning gear in the game. Well, I think part of this conversation does go all the way back to the initial launch of Destiny 2, where essentially we were told that we'd lost all of our gear and we wouldn't be seeing a lot of the stuff we had in Destiny 1 inside of Destiny 2. We even had the little trailer with Kate 6, but I think also Bungie were kind of managing the fact that they'd suggested very early that we would build a persistent character over many years and different releases, and that didn't necessarily quite happen, or at least it didn't happen in the way that some folks expected it to. So regardless, in the end, we've got a lot of exotic gear that has come back for Destiny 2. So what is it that players do enjoy about returning exotics? Why would it be a good idea to give us old content again? Well, firstly, it's because some of it is good content, you know? When you think about it, there is a wealth of forgotten gear, which is essentially history at this point, but on top of this, many of these exotics are things that players are pretty attached to, and this is why there is also excitement when it comes to an exotic returning in the game. A lot of us want to experience some of the finest moments with these items once again, so I think yeah, there absolutely is value, and there are legitimate reasons that players get excited about reprise gear. So what is it that players dislike about returning exotics? Well, going back to that early statement about losing our arsenal going into D2, based on what Bungie had said, some folks absolutely did have the expectation that everything we get would be brand new in Destiny 2. On top of this, there is an argument here that we've firstly already paid to get these exotics, but secondly, that we've already invested to unlock them, either by grinding RNG drops or by completing quests for them in D1. And just like the opposing argument, there are legitimate and relatable points of view represented here, especially for year 1 of Destiny 2. If you look back into those exotic collections, we did get a larger stock of returning exotics initially, and then of course we've seen other stuff inside of year 2. So I guess the question must be, when is the right time to bring an exotic back, but also, what is the right way to do it? And for me, I think Thunderlord has to be one of the best examples of a good reprise weapon. I'm not saying this because of the quest itself, since a lot of us don't really like the time-gated nature of stuff like that, but if you look at the weapon itself and the timing of its release, I think it was pretty solid because it was essentially free content. It wasn't linked to new DLC, so we weren't paying to get it back, but also, the weapon saw a somewhat significant rework and is now a fair bit better than the D1 counterpart. So on every front, I think that Thunderlord is a pretty good example of a valuable reprise weapon. So I guess on the whole, players probably find returning exotics most acceptable or exciting when they aren't bundled as part of a paid content drop, and personally I think this is the best time to do it as well. I think that players also have a concern about a situation where it feels like we're getting more reprise stuff than we are new stuff, and recently that emotion may be a little bit amplified because, of course, we did get the Last Word, and we learn about Thorn and other potential reprises coming up, yet naturally at the same time, Bungie haven't revealed any new exotics for Joker's Wild yet because it simply isn't time for any reveals for that, and I think to a degree that leaves folks feeling like all we're doing is kind of retreading old ground. However, if you look back at the Black Armory, we got 3 brand new exotic weapons, and then the Last Word, so on the whole, including Forsaken, we've seen significantly more new stuff than returning stuff. I think on top of this, there is value to the fact that most of the Year 2 reprises have been pretty good. Ace of Spades isn't simply a port over weapon, it's better than it's ever been, and I think most of us will probably agree when saying that returning exotics since Forsaken have been more impactful than many of the auto reprises that we had in Destiny 2's launch, you know, things like the ACDO feedback fence, Knucklehead Radar, Skull of Dire Ahamkara, maybe even Hardlight. They strike me as being much less interesting. But that's just personal opinion, so what do you guys think? Should we keep getting reprises? And if so, how do you think Bungie should do it, and when? It'd be pretty interesting to see if any kind of consensus emerges here. But as we've spoken about, some folks really do enjoy the idea of returning exotics. Despite the differences of opinion on the issue, a lot of folks have a list of stuff that they'd love to see come back. So let's talk about just some of the most highly requested exotics, and be sure to let me know your thoughts down below, because this of course is a pretty personal question. Some of them are more obvious than others, and I'd say if you put 500 Guardians in a room and ask them what they'd love to see come back, you'd probably end up with a list of every exotic in Destiny 1. And of course, I simply can't represent that, so be sure to comment below with what you'd love to see. But one that is spoken about quite a bit for the Titans would be the TWILIGHT Garrison. Of course, this enabled Titans to get an air evade in midair, and personally I have really good memories of this exotic inside of Destiny 1 as well. It's a really fun PvP exotic, and of course there is an element of skill with TWILIGHT Garrison as well, and so it works on quite a few different levels, you know. It simply has a lot of fun factor, delivers an extra mobility option, and is pretty fantastic for aggressive Titans in PvP, so it's understandable that many Titans would love to see TWILIGHT Garrison once again. Let me know your thoughts about that one. For Hunters, there absolutely are a bunch of different requested exotics, but one that I see probably the most would have to be Bones of Ao. Of course, they would grant an additional jump, and if you were using triple jump on the Golden Gun back in the day, of course you would get 4 jumps. And once again, pretty much like TWILIGHT Garrison, Bones of Ao offered the element of fun factor, but also safer traversals, much higher traversal, and then the fact that depending on how skilled you were with a Hunter, what you could do with Bones of Ao would definitely scale with that, and overall it was a very popular Hunter exotic. Some folks would argue that the new Stompies maybe make Bones of Ao a little redundant, but even with that buff, I still see a lot of requests for Bones of Ao, plus they were pretty sexy, let's face it. And you can't necessarily say that for the Life Jacket TWILIGHT Garrison, but we lived with it for that air evade nonetheless. One that I'd actually quite like to see for Warlocks would be nothing Manacles personally. Definitely made scatter grenades much more lethal back in the day, and I think anything that would help improve scatter grenades right now would be pretty good, but also they were just immense fun, you know, you jump into strikes with Grenadier, focus on that grenade cooldown, and you can literally clear some of the content in the game by doing nothing but throw grenades, which again, you can do that in different ways and to different degrees in Destiny 2. Nothing Manacles were really fun, but let me know any additional Warlock exotics you'd be curious about down below. There are weapons which I see spoken about quite a bit. The pretty commonly requested weapon would be the bad JUJU. Of course, after a kill, the weapon would instantly reload. You'd also get increased damage, so it was essentially kind of like kill clip, but kills that you made with the weapon would also help to charge your super. So it was a really fun weapon across the board, especially good in PvE content. It's possible that we could see bad JUJU come back at some point, of course, with it being a weapon of sorrow. That's definitely an area Bungie have been exploring, so we'll have to wait and see. In terms of other very commonly requested reprises, I do see Icebreaker quite a bit. That could partially be because there was some conversation about a potential returning Icebreaker before Black Armory. But of course this was a somewhat problematic weapon in D1. Bungie attempted various different times to kind of nerf the weapon inside of PvP especially, and in Destiny 2's current sandbox it would be very potent in PvP, especially if it performed anything like it did in D1. So I'm not sure about that one or how Bungie would actually handle it. There have also been a lot of requests for No Land Beyond, especially from PvP players. I've got to say personally it's not a weapon I used all that much. Maybe it's because I need to get good and I'm a scrub, but there is the fact that Devrim K has been teasing us now for a couple of years, and for players who are good with No Land Beyond, I think it would actually be pretty potent in D2's sandbox. Now something that probably all of us will relate to right here would be those exotic swords from Destiny 1. Of course they were a pretty innovative introduction in D1. The Razorlighter, Boltcaster, and Dark Drinker swords were really popular, and they were also very strong, especially paired with some of the artifacts that you could get in Year 3, and they have mostly put Destiny 2 swords to shame. Obviously we could carry loads of ammo back in the day, they did very good damage. All around, sword popularity in D1 was much higher because of these 3 weapons than what we see in D2. So where do you guys stand on that? Do you think that we should get exotic swords as powerful as what we had in D1? Of course Bungie have nudged closer to the same level of power. Black Talon definitely can have some moments in Forsaken, but on the whole the emotional response to the 3 swords we had in D1, because of their cool factor and their power, is definitely significantly different to that we see in D2. A weapon I've spoken about recently would be the Hawkmoon, and Anon Leak did tease that this could potentially return in Penumbra, but on top of that, it's one that I see a lot of folks talking about. But it's a very interesting one, isn't it? Because, of course, all of the different look in the chamber bonuses that it had allowed rounds from the weapon to do a significant amount of damage at random, and it did allow for 2 taps inside of PvP, and the look in the chamber bonus on the whole is something that Bungie moved away from going into Destiny 2. So if they were to bring Hawkmoon back, I'd definitely be very curious to see how it would behave. Also, not to mention, we have weapons like Luna's Howl, and they can reduce time to kill pretty dramatically versus other hand cannons, and a Hawkmoon that behaves anything like it did in D1 does have the potential to kind of undo all of that. So I don't know, Hawkmoon's kind of a difficult one for me to get my head around, to be completely honest. It absolutely is a weapon I'd love to see again. It's probably my favourite exotic hand cannon purely in terms of style, but I'd be curious to hear your opinions about that one down below. Now guys, those are just a bunch of very highly requested exotics that I've noticed, but I have also seen Plan C, Invective, Red Death, Trespasser, so again the list could really go on forever, but if I had to pin down a handful of exotics that are spoken about a lot, it would have to be the ones that I've just listed right there. So anyway, quite an interesting conversation guys. I actually didn't imagine this video would end up being quite this long, but let me know your thoughts down below. How do you feel about returning exotics, and what would be your top returning exotics if you do have any? Bear in mind that this is also something Bungie will have to think about and have a solution for going into Destiny 3. Do we simply carry on as we have been and focus primarily on new stuff but also bring some stuff back? Or is that model going to change in some way? I'd love to hear your thoughts about that below as well. For now though guys, that is enough ranting. If you've enjoyed the video or have a rating below, that would be super appreciated. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the conversation, want to keep up to date with everything related to Destiny 2, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But for now guys, thanks for tuning in as always, and I hope you have an awesome day.